Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I got this beautiful look on my client. So if you want to see how I got this look, then make sure you keep watching. So first off, with the client makeup, I like to wipe the face of any residue. Whether they say they clean their face or not, you still want to just wipe off any residue that could be on the skin, any dirt, oils, and things like that. You can use a makeup wipe, micellar water, it doesn't matter. So I like to start off with the brows first, and I do like to use powder on the brows, just kind of brush that powder through the brows so that my eye product, pencil, or pomade just can have something to stick to. So I'm going to be brushing the brows up first. That's what you want to do. You don't want to just start to work on your client's brows and you haven't put them did them in shape. All right, so I'm using this NYX micro brow pencil in the shade dark brown, and I'm just lining her brows out with this pencil, and I'm just making sure I'm using light strokes. She does have more so fuller brows. They're a little sparse, but they're still fuller. So I'm not going to add too much product on the brows. I'm just going to line out the bottom, the top, and then just add product where it's needed. So if there's like a gap, a space where there's no hairs, you do want to go ahead and just fill in those areas. So I'm going to be using some concealer to clean up her brows, and I'm going to be using the Thread Beauty Concealer. I'm using this one is in a shade, I think number 6 or 7. And I'm just using this concealer on a flat top eyeshadow brush to clean up her brows. I like to make sure that the brows are sharp. So that's why I don't pay attention. Like I don't take too much time anymore to actually fill in the brows and do them too perfectly. Because once I got the brows to my actual liking, I just like to use a concealer to shape them. Okay, so as you guys can see, I am just, again, shaping up the brows. You do want to take your time because sometimes if you move too quickly with the concealer, shaping the brows up, you can actually mess up your work. The concealer will erase your work. So you want to be careful when you're doing the brows and just taking your time to make sure they're at least sisters, okay? Maybe not twins, but at least they look alike. So next I'm going to be taking a soft brown eyeshadow in her crease. I'm going to be using this as my transition color. I will be saturating the eye with this. You want to place your shadow on the eyes as a transition color, but you want to keep doing the shadow until you see the shadow come up, okay? So with this shadow, I'm gradually building it up because I didn't want the transition to be too harsh. I will be adding other colors on or around this shadow, so I just want to make sure that it is showing up, okay? A transition more so is like a base for my eyeshadow. Next, I did take a different brush, and I am using more of an eggplant purpley shade. It's not really purple. It's more of an eggplant shade, so it's kind of in between. And I'm just using this in the crease, hence why I switched my brushes, because I want to make sure that this shadow is in the crease more so than, on where I put my transition shade at. So I will be building this up to my liking once again because I do plan on doing a cut crease eyeshadow. When I was talking to her, I was telling her about how I normally don't stand on the side that you see me on doing makeup because I'm just so used to standing on my left side and I just, I'm just used to it. So anyways, I'm just once again still building it up to my liking. I want to make sure that shadow showed up again because I'm going to be doing a crease. So I went in with an even deeper shadow. This one is more so eggplant. It's coming up purple, but eggplant does come up more purple. And I'm just putting this smack dab in the crease of her eye. I'm not necessarily taking it all the way out. I'm just putting this smack dab in the crease as I want a little bit of this to show up above that crease line. So I will be going in with a flat eyeshadow brush. I did just add some concealer on both sides of the brush to help flatten it even more. And I'm just cutting out this crease, and I'm going as slowly as possible. Cutting out the crease on a client is way more difficult than it looks, okay? It looks easy, but it's actually difficult, and you do want to take your time on this step because any mistakes can be shown. And when it comes to a cut crease, it's almost hard to fix it if you move the concealer out of place. So if you move the concealer accidentally too far up and you've already placed that down, you have to just continue with moving it far up. So again, take your time with this specific step, okay? And this does take, again, it takes time. So you want to make sure you make time for, this particular makeup application if you are a makeup artist. Yeah, so next I'm going in with a matte eyeshadow. This is more of a mauve pink, and I'm placing this all over her lid. I did spray my brush once, and then I just went into that shade because I wanted to give that matte shadow something to stick to so I can be able to apply it on the lid. Do not saturate your brush too much. This is not a shimmer. This is a matte. So I will be building this up on her eyelid. I'm just building it up back and forth. Literally went into that shade a few times just to make sure it actually shows up. So again, I'm taking it all the way up to the crease. I'm not going outside the crease. I'm making sure I saturate that whole entire lid with that color. Okay, again, even on this part, because using matte eyeshadows can be very tricky. If you're placing the eyeshadow on the lid, you don't want to keep it in one spot, as you're trying to saturate it. So just move it around and it'll be a lot easier for you. Next, I'm going in with that same eggplant shade and a little bit of black, and I'm just smoking this out or buffing it out on the lower lash line, kind of taking it out a little bit towards the outer corner, because I do want to diffuse that lash line. I don't want it to be like too sharp and too harsh when I put my eyeliner on. So I will be using my gel ink blot liner in 77 to do this, and I am taking a small eyeliner makeup brush and I'm just lining her eyes with that. So I will be doing more of a graphic liner as well. So I did go into her crease. You guys could barely see it because my arm was in the way. And so yeah, I did put a liner halfway in her crease, kind of going up, like a little graphic liner moment, so I felt like it was really cute. Next, I'm just going to be adding some lashes that I got from Amazon, and I'm going to be wiping her skin with a makeup wipe. So this is going to take away any residue, any fallout, anything that could have been on her skin. Okay, next I'm going in with a serum, or this is an elixir. This is from the Snail Elixir, and I'm just placing this all over her face right after I wiped it, just to soften up the skin. Next, I'm going to be using a moisturizer. This is the Pond's moisturizer, which I absolutely love because this moisturizer does give the skin moisture, and it's going to also help the makeup move or act better. When the skin is too dry or the skin is not properly based, the makeup can clash with the skin, which is going to leave the skin a lot drier, trying to look for something to cling to, and I just don't want that. I really want the base to match up well with the foundation. So I did use this foundation buffing brush to blend out that moisturizer, because you don't want the moisturizer to be seen. You don't want the moisturizer to sit on the skin. You want it to be saturated into the skin. So this is the primer I'm placing on her face now, and I did put this primer particularly in the T-zone area, forehead, and things like that. Next, I'm going to be using the Juvia's Place I Am Magic Foundation. This one is in the shade Kano. It will show up a little darker on her skin, as it is about a shade darker. I noticed that in person, but I wasn't alarmed because I knew that I was going to use some concealer to combat that and just to kind of highlight those areas. This foundation was so smooth on her skin. A little bit of the Juvia's Place foundation goes a long way, just a little bit, like literally a little. Okay, so I'm using this same brush I used to put the primer and moisturizer on, and I'm just blending this out all over her skin, and it just looks so seamless and so flawless. I believe this is a brush that I got from Amazon, but it looks just like the e.l.f. buffing foundation brush, so you can use that one too. I will be using the Thread Beauty Concealer. Again, this one is in the shade number 7, I believe, 7 or 8. And I'm using this to highlight underneath her eyes, the bridge of her nose, her forehead. I'm highlighting all those areas with this concealer. You do not need a lot of this concealer because this concealer is very pigmented, so you don't need a lot. I am going to be placing a reverse contour with that concealer at the bottom of her face. And I'm just fanning this concealer because I really want the concealer to get tacky. I don't want it to be too wet before I place it on the skin, because if it's too wet, the concealer will spread in places that you don't want it to spread. And then also, if it's too wet underneath the eyes, it will cause creasage. So you do want to wait a little while until that concealer underneath the eyes especially dries up a little bit. You don't want it to be too matte, because then again, then it can't move, and then you don't want it to be too wet because it'll move around too much. And every time you turn around and look back at your client's face, it's creasing, and that comes from the concealer being too wet or too much underneath the eyes. So I'm going in with a beauty sponge, and I'm just blending out this concealer. And so as you guys can see, the concealer just blended out so perfectly. Next, I will be going in with a contour shade. So I'm going to be using the Thread Beauty concealer again. I believe this concealer is in the shade number 12, and this is the Thread Beauty Cover It concealer. in number 12. So I'm using this as her cream contour. Okay, so if you don't have contour at home, like a stick or anything, you can always go in with a dark concealer, dark foundation, or dark eyeshadow. Okay, just make sure you do it to the liking of your client's complexion. So I'm going to be using this brush and I'm just going to be blending out this contour, keeping it exactly where it needed to be, placing it where it needs to go. As you guys can see, I'm just buffing it into her skin and in more of an upward motion using very light strokes because I don't want this to look muddy and I also don't want it to spread all over her face and it will cause her face to be too dark. So I'm going to go ahead and now blend out this concealer because I felt like it was on there long enough and it got tacky enough for me to begin to blend it out. So as I'm blending out this concealer, I'm taking it up past her eye. That's not everybody's cup of tea, but I like to do it that way because it gives the face more of a lifted look. So I'm all for making my client look snatched. You can, again, you don't have to blend out the concealer far past her eyes, but I do like to do that because it just looks more flattering on the face to me. I will be going in with some cream blush, except for this is an actual lipstick from my lipstick palette, Anastasia Beverly Hills palette, and I'm just using my sponge to blend out that blush. Next, I'm going to be contouring her nose with the same concealer I used to contour her face. And yeah, so you just want to make sure that the contours on the nose go with the shape of her nose. Sometimes we just do too much and you want it to be flattering, okay? So as you can see, that contour is not too harsh. I'm going with the MAC Studio Fix powder. This one is in the shade NC45, and I'm just patting a little bit of this underneath the eyes before I set underneath the eyes. Sometimes I make the mistake of going straight way into setting with a setting powder, and sometimes when you do that, it does cause creasage. It does. Okay, it just do. So going in with a what is it? Going in with a compact powder always helps to keep creasage from happening. So I did go in with my powder from my brand ORAYBEAUTY, and that powder is in the shade chocolate, and I'm just using that same brush and I'm lightly patting it underneath the eyes, the forehead, the bridge of the nose, the entire T-zone area, because we don't want this area to move. We want it to stay in place. Okay, so next I'm going in with the MAC Studio Fix powder in the shade NC45 and NC50. She's more so of like an NC48 at this moment, but I didn't have that powder, so I just blended the two together. And I'm just making sure I set that face well. Any oily spots you see on the face, always go back and set it. I'm going in with my double set method for the under eyes, and I am using my second powder from my brand in the shade Banana. Now I'm taking this underneath the eye with that same brush. Typically, I do not use a brush to set underneath the eyes to set, those areas. Y'all know I'm a sponge girl, okay? But I was trying to do something different, girl, and that powder was flying all over the place. I was like, girl, I typically do not even use a brush to set underneath the eyes, but I don't like doing that because the powder does fly in the client's eye. It just flies all over the place. But anyway, now I'm using my Black Radiance Contour Palette in the shade Deep Dark or Dark Deepest. And I'm using this to further set the contour already placed down. I'm doing the same thing on the nose. Okay, so now I'm going to be just setting the side of that nose with the sponge. Again, I tried it with the powder, with the brush, and it was just flying all over the place. So next I'm just doing a reverse contour. You guys, this makeup looks so bomb. I just had to stop and say that. So I am using the Juvia's Place Blush Palette, and I'm just further setting the blush and just making sure that her cheeks are popping. And I'm going to go ahead and add the lips. So before I do the lips, I like to wipe it off. A client actually told me this, that the lipstick does not last if you do not wipe the lips off. So I wipe the lips off now all the time. And I'm going to go in with my lip liner from my brand ORAYBEAUTY. And this lip liner is in the shade Mocha. This is my dark brown lip liner. I'm just going to be lining her lips, not overlining or any of that, just lining her lips to my liking, making sure I keep the shape of her lips because they're beautiful. So I just want to keep the shape. I am going to be going in with a concealer from my contour palette. And then I'm going to be using my lip glosses. One is in the shade For Her, and the next shade is in the shade Skin Tight. So I'm putting on For Her first, which is a nice mauve nude. It looks so beautiful. Like literally, she could have worn this by itself. Okay, so I told her to blot her lips because your client helps you out a lot when they block their lips. It just kind of bring the product together. Now I'm going in with that lighter shade Skin Tight from my brand, and I'm just placing it at the top and bottom of her lips. I will have her blend it out. I'm going to be using a small detail brush to blend out that liner. I do want the liner to show on her lips. I don't want it to be too blended in, because I just want to make sure that, you know, her lips have that contrast. So here I'm sweeping the powder away that was baking for a little while. And this is one of the reasons why I like to make sure the face is moisturized really well, because I will be having powder sit on the face, and then I do go in with a lot of powder. So the face needs to be moisturized so that the face is not getting dried out because of the powder that is on the face. And she was mentioning to me how she liked the fact that I use powder. She said some people, when they do her makeup, they don't use powders, and she doesn't like that overly dewy, oily look. She said she liked her face to be more matte. And that does come from using powders. So the face will be matte if you would use powders, okay? So I did spray her face, and now I'm just adding a little bit of finishing touches. I use a lighter pink in her inner corners, which is a matte shadow, and I use that same matte shadow underneath her brow bone just to highlight it and, you know, give it an illusion of a lift, okay? So I add a little bit of highlight on her nose and her forehead, and you guys, this is the finished look. Yeah, so let me know what you guys think about this look down in the comments. Let me know if you want to see more client tutorials, and yeah, I want to bring those to you guys as well. Thank you all so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you are not already, and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload a new video. And I will see you all in my next one. Thank you all so much for watching. I love you all. Bye.